Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the ruffed grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Long. As the intro stated, I am Mr. Eric Long. This is Mr. Cody Altizer. How's Cody's world? How's Cody doing today?
Oh, Cody is good as gold, right as rain. My world is good. How is yours?
Oh, just fantastic. I've had a pretty good week.
A little battered and bruised.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, not that anybody, whatever. I had surgery, so I don't want to call it an emergency, but had to get her out. Yeah.
Gallbladder is what he's talking about.
Yes.
He said
I zoned out there. I forgot where I was. Did I just pee my pants? Yeah. So, no. Yeah, had my gallbladder removed of all things, because that's what you think of, right? When's the last time you even thought you had a gallbladder, right?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you where it is inside me.
Yeah. So, so I had that, and I'm trying to heal up from that, and it's getting better each day. But we're getting there. We're getting there. But other than that, homework.
Well, good.
What we got?
Yeah, everybody send your thoughts and prayers to Eric.
Don't make me laugh.
I haven't seen proof of it. Not that I'm asking. So up until this very second, I still am not convinced he's not faking it. So
Stop it. It hurts to laugh. Stop it.
But no, appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. We thank you for your time and your interest and your support of not so much what we're doing, but for what we represent, and that is the Ruffed Grouse. We are thankful that you take time out of your day to like an Instagram post, subscribe to a YouTube channel, or listen to the podcast. It is all helpful and appreciated, and we are thankful. Our homework items, we will make as quickly as possible to get into the good stuff. Our billboard campaign is still going on. We are slowly but surely moving towards our fundraising goal mark. HabitatVA.org. Every donation is helpful and supports the logging industry, a logger, the ruffed grouse. Help us get that fully paid for. We are almost over 65% of the way there.
Yes, great.
Homework item number 2, if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we send you a free sticker. Chippendale. We have come to name our ruffed grouse. That's all it takes.
That's where we're at.
Leave us a 5-star rating or review, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Screenshot it to prove to us that you did that with your address, and we will get that sticker on your way.
Yeah, if it hasn't happened yet, you DM Cody and you tell him, like, where's my stick?
Yeah.
Right? So
don't be afraid to be rude. Today's guest is Tim Flanigan, who, I tell you, I mean, if I had to put it into words, I mean, he is who I want to be when I get older. I don't know him very well at all, just from seeing his posts on social media. Tim is among many other things, I'm sure, but how I know him is a ruffed grouse photographer. I see his images on Facebook. Everywhere, honestly. And, as I've mentioned before, I love the bird and everything that it represents. And every time I see one of Tim's photos in its habitat environment doing ruffed grouse things, I fall in love with the bird even more. And as part of that, being a photographer of the species, he spends so much time with them, which I'm sure has provided him with a lot of information and knowledge about the species, about its biology, about its habitat. So looking forward to learning from Tim, reference all those things.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned that we're going to have him on the podcast. It was like, I know who, I've heard of the name. I know who you're talking about, but went to social media and it was like, oh, duh. And it's amazing, Cody, as you know, and the ones and people that listen to podcasts that do film and photography, when you go to his site and you see some of his phenomenal work, you know how much work it took. You just don't go out there and just take a picture of a woodcock. Sorry. or a ruffed grouse. That's just not how it works. And the amount of time and effort and motivation, getting up in the morning, doing all that, it just says a lot about somebody. Just that alone, says a lot about that, how much work it goes into getting that money shot, if you will, and then doing the extra stuff that he does, advocating and stuff like that, for the bird and forest ecology in general. So can't wait to have him on.
Yeah, let's get it started.
Yep.
Alrighty. Mr. Tim Flanigan, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good. Great to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to have you on. This is an episode I've been excited about. The Gift for Grouse podcast. We're still itty bitty. Eric knows better than I do. This is episode 9 or 10, and as we're fleshing this thing out, have some biologists that we've wanted to have on, some foresters, and a Rolodex of guests. And Tim, you were at the top of that list. You've always been, honestly, an inspiration to me with your photography of ruffed grouse. I'm always looking forward to the pictures that you post, and I'm such a sucker for the species and how beautiful it is. Whenever I see one of your photos, it only makes me fall in love even more.
Oh, thank you. They're just such an amazing animal. The ultimate survivalist, and the most challenging upland bird there is. There's no reason you can't like them. You got to love them. If you know them, you love them. That's for sure.
Man.
That's exactly right. Eric and I did a podcast recently, and he said it really well. They're an easy bird to romanticize, if you think about it. And that was a good way to put it, I feel like.
No doubt. There's so much so that the taking of a first bird, that first experience of taking your first grouse on the wing, can be a life-changing event. It is so amazing to bring that epitome of the wild into your hand, and to hold that ruffed grouse in your hand is to touch and feel the essence of wildness. And when you've done that, you've accomplished the pinnacle of upland bird shooting that there is in the world. It's just, and it really does change your life. You'll never forget that memory. It's indelible.
I love it. It's so funny because I remember when I shot my first one, over my dog, and I was in Michigan. I could take you right to the spot without Onyx, without any of it. Just take you right there. And not to speak for Cody, but Cody's going to go on his first hunt, hopefully here in a couple days, and I'm excited for him.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, because it has nothing to do with killing or not. It's just it's something about it. You can't explain it.
Yeah, killing is bittersweet.
Yeah,
experiencing the grouse. Just experience a grouse being in your woods hallows that piece of ground. And what you just said about your memory in Michigan, for about 35 years, I hunted with Dr. Al Geist, U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist. He was Mr. Woodcock. He started the Woodcock wing bee, and he loved grouse hunting and so forth. And we were talking on the phone one day, and I said, by the way, Doc, do you remember your first grouse? He said, oh my God, Tim, like it was yesterday. I was such and such a number 9 shot, and not far from Chicago where he was raised. But that memory, and he was up in years at the time. It was indelible. It comes back immediately.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is great.
Yeah, they're a magical bird.
Yeah. I tell you what, we should. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. You should be the spokesman. I got a smile. Like Cody and I, we got smiles on our face. You should be nothing but the spokesman. Whether it's RGS, us, anybody that's grouse, anything, because I'm feeding off your. I had no idea, man. This is awesome. You got so much energy about this. This is great.
Well, you mentioned the RGS, and any upland hunter that pursues the sport should be a member. I've been working with the RGS, supplying photographs to them for several decades now, and writing for them, and they are, as far as I'm concerned, the premier wildlife management agency in the United States. And I've done some research on that. The percentage of the dollars that they take in, a great percentage of that, pretty much more than any other site type of agency, goes toward habitat and to manage the bird, to the benefit of the bird.
Yeah.
So that's laudable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
They certainly are. I've met, Eric and I together and separately met a lot of the foresters, a lot of the higher ups, and they do a lot of good work. Eric and I with the Give for Grouse initiative, we're still a baby at this point, and people ask us, who's the voice for the species, and it has been and always will be, hopefully, the Ruffed Grouse Society. But you mentioned, Tim, that you've done a lot of work for RGS as far as writing and photography. And I want to kind of give you the floor before we get too deep into the nitty gritty to bring our listeners up to who you are. You mentioned, a photographer and a writer. Give us a quick and dirty version of, your career as a photographer.
Well, I started out as a hunter. I killed my first grouse when I was age 12 with a little hammer, single barrel 410, cranked the hammer and killed my first grouse sitting on a snowbank. That hooked me right there. And then I never killed a lot of deer in my time, but deer hunting was boring to me compared to grouse hunting. So I pursued grouse and woodcock throughout my life, and I'm an octogenarian now. I just turned 80. So I've been hunting them for about 62 years. But I've been photographing them for at least 50 years. One of my, early on, I was an auto mechanic, raised with a dad who was in the business. Then I became a game warden for Pennsylvania. I was a game warden here first we were called game protectors, and then wildlife conservation officers, now game wardens. I was a game warden for 30 years, and I lived in a district that was loaded with grouse and deer. So I would hunt grouse in the day and hunt poachers at night, and it was a very good career. But one of the things, and I've told this to a number of people, and it's in my book, in the Grouse and Woodcock, The Birds of My Life by Wild River Press. When I was in the training school for the Game Commission, Ross Sleffler School of Conservation, I was sitting in the front row, and the guest speaker that day was Dr. Roger Latham. He was the outdoor writer for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and he was the chief of research for the wildlife research for the Game Commission. He stood there in front of me, and at this time I had killed an awful lot of woodcock and grouse. And he stood there in front of me at the podium on arm's length away and said, "When I hunt ruffed grouse, I choose to shoot only male grouse." And my eyes got big, and he said, "And when I hunt woodcock, I choose to shoot only male woodcock." And he fell off the ivory tower I had him on right there. I thought, no way. Back at that time, I didn't really know the species when I had them in the different sexes in my hand. It was just a bird to eat. We liked them. We really liked them and loved hunting them. But for him to say that astounded me. And he went on to say he could recognize the hawks and the trees and the wildflowers while driving along the turnpike. But I finally realized what his message was, and his message was, young man, learn to see. Learn the field marks of a ruffed grouse in flight. Learn the field marks of a woodcock in flight. And within a short time, that initiated a study where I wanted to prove and photograph everything that I could find written in the Gardner Bump research from New York as the greatest most involved grouse study ever was. I wanted to research all of the things in there and then see it in the field and photograph it. Very shortly, I learned, and Dr. Geis was part of it, Dr. Geis called his shot every time. If he shot a woodcock, he'd tell you if it was a hen or a cock before it hit the ground. Same with the grouse. In very short time, now you've got to see a few birds. Not everybody can do it just instantly. But once you realize that when that grouse flies, they look very different. A hen looks very different from a male. She's much smaller. Her tail is very short. Her tail looks like it's 1/4 of her body. Her wingspan is shorter. Her wingspan is maybe a little faster, but she's a small bird with a skinny neck and a short tail. When a male goes up, he's a chunky bird with a big tail. His tail is longer and will flare wider. And if you can notice this black subterminal band, it usually is entire. About 25% of males will have an interrupted band. If you can see that big long tail, his tail looks like it's a third of his body, a full third of his body. That's a male. A big grouse with a big tail and a stout neck, That's a male bird. In woodcock, it's even easier. The woodcock hen appears to be, she's at least a third larger physically than the male. She's larger, lighter colored, has a noticeably longer beak. She has a greater wingspan and a bit slower wingspan. The males are tiny, darker, short beak, and fly very fast, very erratically with very rapid beat. The males tend to really corkscrew through the brush, where a female woodcock often will. They don't always tower up, level off, and fly off. A female woodcock will give you easier shots to make than will a male. So if you see a small woodcock that flies quickly and erratically, that's a boy. And usually the females migrate first, north and south. At the first beginning of the season, you're going to kill mostly female woodcock. At the end of the season, you'll kill more male woodcock. And younger woodcock tend to like young females in the spring or in the fall migration tend to like more open cover, where the older birds that come along a little later like thicker cover. So it's where they are, how they look, you pretty well know what sex you're shooting. And ruffed grouse, if once you see a few grouse and pay attention to those sites, within a season or two, you'll be able to identify sexes very easily.
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, let me add. Even
Yeah.
if you're not trying to shoot with sex ID to avoid shooting hens, because we want to preserve those hens. Even if you shoot at every grouse you see, my records show, and I've kept records and I've guided a lot of people, kept records for years. You only shoot, your bag limit will include only 5 to 20% females. Females are so much more spooky, so much more elusive that when they hear you slam the door in the truck out along the road and get the gun, the dog out, they're already sneaking away. When you're in the woods, their hearing and their sight abilities are tremendous. A hen is much more secretive than the males. The males actually get kind of bold. They'll actually challenge you. They'll sometimes you'll see a young male walk in front of a dog and pop his tail, and he's like testing that dog. Go ahead and hit this, hit this.
Mm.
That's the target they want you to hit because the tail pulls out very easily.
Yeah.
The hen will walk away quietly when she gets, and often she'll drop a poop right before she runs away, and that'll cause your dog to lock up on point. And a whole lot of guys are saying, "Oh, false points, false points." No, that's one of the things she does. That's a tactic, and she'll hurry away. Grouse rarely fly. Grouse fly to get it to avoid danger or to fly up to roost or feed. That is it. They walk. They are a terrestrial bird. They're born walking right out of the nest. They walk away from the nest. They all hatch in one day, and they walk away from it immediately. So, and once she walks away, she'll often fly up in a tree very silently. Grouse can fly silently. That roaring flush is a tactic for our benefit to scare the daylights out of us and make you go whoa before you get the shot off. Delays that shot. But the hen grouse is extremely elusive compared to the male. And I'm kind of talking too long on that, but it doesn't really matter if you try to avoid shooting them. You're only going to shoot a small percentage of females. It's nature's way to protect the female.
Yeah.
So basically, what Cody, what he's saying is, if you go out here in the next couple of days and grouse hunt for your first time and shoot a female, our friendship's over.
No, don't feel bad about that.
You're terrible. It was a good ride while it lasted.
No, I did. I don't mean to decry killing a female.
No, tell him that. Tell him he's got to pay attention.
Well, grouse don't display much sexual dimorphism like pheasants do.
Yeah.
Well, there's
the woodcock. I'm down with the woodcock. You can usually tell male, female. Not that I'm an expert at it, but the grouse thing, I tell you what, a lot of that, I've never heard some of that before, especially the hens, if you will, dropping some scent down before scurrying off. That's interesting. So that's all my dog does. It's just false points.
One of the things, there's two things that a grouse dog, and I had Brittany's, I had a wonderful Weimaraner that was a grouse specialist.
Hmm.
And I've had a lot of good Brittany's, hunted with all kinds of other dogs, but the grouse understands that predator, that terrestrial predator. And by the way, avian predation, back in the 70s and 80s, we had the Appalachian Ruffed Grouse study. It was a really in-depth study. I actually killed two of their radio-collared birds down in Maryland. That proved that 65% or a little more of grouse mortality, natural grouse mortality, was attributable to hawks and owls. The avian predation is the greatest predation. Terrestrial predation is not much threat. The grouse are pretty much able to escape that. About 40% was terrestrial predation. So they're wise to you and that dog, and that hen knows how to scurry away. And that when you have a puppy and he sees he noses his first grouse, his nose goes right to the vent. Every puppy I've ever had, when I showed him his first grouse, the nose goes right to the vent of that bird.
Huh.
A pointing dog smells two things. A dead bird isn't breathing and it's not defecating, of course, it's dead. So it's not putting off that much scent. A live bird is breathing and putting out scent, and it's also has some smell at that vent. And I think I know she purposely drops a little bit before she scurries away, just to get that dog to stop and point and get us all.
Yeah, so she can get out. Yeah.
Yes.
God, let's go grouse hunting, Tim. Let's go grouse hunting. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
They are the ultimate in survivalists. They understand threats, and they know how to avoid it.
Well, if you go up to Michigan and nowadays, I know the last 2 years I kind of stopped going up there because the grouse, they're flushing 60, 70 yards ahead. They're running and you're not accomplishing. Now, granted, that's some of my hunting ability that's causing some of that, but at the other time, it's the pressure and all this other stuff, so.
Yes. We had that similar throughout my lifetime. I've seen it happen. Here in Pennsylvania, grouse were always hunted very hard. And we'll talk about some times when we had a lot of grouse. They're almost extinct now here in the county I live. But back when we had a lot of grouse, we hunted them hard. And our grouse were like that. They'd flush at the sound of you in the woods. But when you go up to Michigan or up to Maine, you could get right up on a pointed grouse. But they are now the pressure is so great now out in the Midwest, because as the populations have fallen in Virginia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, people are now going to the Midwest and pounding those birds.
Yeah.
The harder you hunt them, the wilder they get. It's the way.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask you this. Let's kind of switch topics here real quick. We'll get back on all this, but your photography, as soon as Cody told me that we were having you on, I did what most people do, is get on social media, and it's undescribable how good they are. But I say this jokingly, so I looks a little suspicious, like this woodcock that just seems to follow you around. Like how in the hell are you getting a good woodcock photo?
The secret is just being sort of still and cautious.
Yeah.
If you approach a woodcock, let's say if tomorrow I go out and see a woodcock, if I park the car, and often I do a lot of road hunting for grouse and woodcock, and I know places to look for them. If I spot one, I'm going to park the car and I'm going to very slowly approach that woodcock. When I get to a range, one of my favorite lenses for woodcock is a 18 to 300. I also have a 2 to 500 that works great for them. I always use some kind of support, never just hand hold the camera. I usually some kind of support, because camera movement blurs things. But once you get close enough to a woodcock where he'll tolerate you, they might, especially a hen, she might flare her tail and act just stop. And once I get where I think I have my good photography range, I just sit down. Sit down in the snow or the mud, whatever it is, get your butt wet, just sit down and stay with it. I've told a lot of young photographers, once you have a cooperating subject, stay with it until it's done, until it flies away or whatever.
Yeah.
Just stay with it, stay in the viewfinder, and take that shot every now and then. Well, one of the things I learned photographing grouse is I do a lot of that kind of thing. Once I find a grouse log, I'll cover up with camo and be there before daylight. Be on that grouse log. What I've learned with them is the trip of a shutter, and I usually use a Nikon 500 D500s. A click of the shutter that alerts them. You'll see them look. What was that? Especially if you're close. But if you set that thing on continuous high, where it sounds like a sewing machine, sounds mechanical, bird's gone. If it sounds mechanical, it's not natural.
Yeah. Yeah, because I have a grouse that I film and video and take pictures of. And that thing, it's like we have a discussion back and forth. It's like it's time to go home. It's like I've been sitting in the blind for 3 hours, and it's like I've taken every picture that I possibly can of this thing, and it's like 10 yards away. And it's like, all right, it's time. And he just goes, what's up? Yeah,
Yep.
and hey, let's go. And he'll look around
Yep.
until I unzip the zipper. Then
Oh yeah.
yeah, but yeah.
What a blessing. Now, I have had a number of occasions where I've been able to photograph these aggressive males. And a lot of people talk about tame grouse. Those grouse are not tame. Usually people discover them, they're driving through a woodlot with a four-wheeler, and that four-wheeler is going pop, 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 sounds almost like a grouse drumming. And that bring this aggressive male out. And he's upset that you're invading his country, his territory. He'll fly up on that four wheeler, maybe fly up on you. And I've been able to photograph several of those, and I've had them peck my ears and flog me and flog my hands. They're angry at you. They want you to get out of my territory.
Yeah.
But they are great photo opportunities. Most of them you can't get far enough away from. They want to flog you and beat you.
Yeah.
You can't just get away and get good photographs. They're very difficult to photograph. So.
I've only gotten one picture of of woodcock. Neighbor boy found a nest, a hen flushed a hen off a nest, and so I put a deer camera on it, and then went there and took some photos. But it was just her on a nest, and she wasn't doing anything other than looking at me. But still, it was really neat to take some pics of that and stuff, and then getting them hatching on the deer camera, the pictures and video. It was cool. As soon as they were born, they're doing a doodle dance.
Yes.
It was so neat. It was so awesome. Yeah. And what was interesting too from that is that this hen turkey was coming to the nest after it was hatched out and eating the eggshells.
Yes.
Right? It was neat.
Other birds like eggshells.
Yes.
In fact, that's one of the things they suggest you feed to your backyard birds, crushed up eggshells.
Yeah.
But the woodcock they're an absolutely amazing bird. Even they're very different from the grouse in their habitats, but you can imagine that little bird migrating 1,000 miles or more.
Yeah.
We have people. Actually, I had a feature. I illustrated a feature article on woodcock hunting in Texas Wildlife Magazine. They actually hunt them in eastern Texas.
No way.
And they tell me that they actually breed and raise young in eastern Texas, Louisiana. I don't know that for sure, but I've been told that. But they migrate completely up and down the East Coast, from the Canadian provinces clear down to Louisiana, Texas. It's absolutely amazing. And they find food, even in the they're predominantly earthworm eaters, and they probe with that prehensile bill down in. I could talk for hours about it. How they have a lot of nerves in those feet, and that bouncing. That's a testing to make the. Trying to say the name of the testing. They're shaking the soil. They're basically kicking the brush pile to make that worm move.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When that worm moves, he moves in slime, and he makes a sound that they hear, and they feel it. Woodcock have tremendously large feet for a little bird, full of nerve endings that feel that movement.
No.
Their beak is full of nerves that when they touch the ground, they can feel that movement. And when they probe down in the ground, their ears now are right on top the surface. The whole bill is in the ground. The ears are right here, so they can hear and down here feel with that tip of that bill, and open that prehensile bill and pull that worm out of there. They also have the way their eyes are set, 360 degrees. So that when the beak is clear down in the ground, just their nostrils are not covered, they can see you and I and the bird dog coming on the surface. They're absolutely amazing birds. One
Yeah.
year we had such a drought here. Our all the covers where I hunt woodcock and have some very good ones. A state park nearby. Wonderful woodcock hunting. I can go out and kill a limit of 3 every day. But we had such a drought. Everything was the wood. The surface of the ground was like hard packed wood. It's like a board. But we still had a bunch of grouse. We had a very large Scotch pine plantation in this state park, and that Scotch pine plantation was loaded with woodcock. We killed some woodcock that day, and Dr. Geis had sent me. He set me up with a friend of his. Said, "Take him over to the park for woodcock. I'm going to hunt here." When we got back to meet with Doc, he said, "I want to see those birds," because he hadn't found one because of the drought. We opened them up. Now woodcock don't have a gizzard; they have a stomach. Opened that stomach, and they were full of, just loaded with tiny little beetle larvae, little tiny bugs, just a big wad of them. What they were doing, and in that the leaf litter or the needle duff in that plantation, we were seeing swirls of pine needles that looked like they had taken their beak and swirled, and these pine needles looked like a little volcano about this high. What they were doing was searching those little beetle larvae out of there, and they were loaded with food. They didn't need the earthworm. They're absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny in the hunting world. Every now and then you get on for whatever reason. It just ain't usually get you angry. Someone will go, "Oh, the woodcock. I wish the woodcock they getting away with the grouse and all this other stuff." And it's like, you're insane. it's,
Yeah.
it's just as much fun when your dog goes on point with a woodcock than it is a grouse, and it's just still, yeah. I don't see it, but anyway.
Well, for most of my life, woodcock were pretty much disdained by grouse hunters. The
Yeah.
elitist grouse hunter says, "Oh, I don't shoot those little things. My dog won't. I don't put my dog in those little things." Strictly a grouse hunter. Well, and I wrote a story about that for the Upland Almanac. It was called. Um, it'll come to me in a moment. Anyway, grouse back then were so. That was a premier bird, and they still are. But when the grouse population has dropped, as it has now, we are now seeing woodcock come into great favor because our dogs have something to work and we have something to shoot at. We
Yeah.
still have our sport. It concerns me a bit because I know how many female woodcock get killed. And I think most of the killing of woodcock, most of the harvest is females.
Yeah.
That concerns me a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, to circle back to grouse, Tim, one thing I wanted to ask you is, having spent so much time with them, both hunting but especially, in the blind and photographing and observing them. And I think, I've always said, when it comes to wildlife, all wildlife, observation is our greatest gift, to be able to sit and observe any species, but especially ruffed grouse, because most people's experience with grouse is a flush, whether you're hunting or walking through the woods, and unintentionally, I mean, they're in and out of your life in a matter of seconds. It's rare to actually get to sit and observe the bird and all of the nuance and behavior and beauty of it. Like I said at the beginning, I think they're just such an easy bird to love. As you said, I'm just such a sucker for every single thing about them. And Eric said they're an easy bird to romanticize. So one thing I wanted to ask you, and all the time you've spent photographing and observing them, what are some things that jump out to you that you've learned about the species, having spent so much time photographing, being so close to them? And you kind of touched on it, that kind of predatory defense of the hen dropping a poop, which I think is super cool, makes perfect sense. But yeah, just some little nuances, some little mannerisms, behavior characteristics that you've observed, having spent so much time so close to ruffed grouse over the years.
Oh, I'm happy to answer that. And we, as hunters, we are remiss in there. Well, we're shortchanged by we only see grouse for a short time. We get the flush, we get the shot, and that's basically what we know about grouse. Now, sure, we learn about the habitat and where we flush them, and we should talk about that at length. But when you have the time to really watch a species, the longer you watch it, the more you learn about it, the more you understand its lifestyle, and the more you appreciate that bird. And that's one of the reasons I love to share photography because hopefully it'll make people appreciate that bird and love him even more. Grouse are always, always, always on alert. An old time turkey hunter. He was a fall turkey hunter, and he hunted only gobblers, and he thought springtime turkey hunting was a sin. It was just a horrendous thing to do, take advantage of that bird in the springtime. But he said to me, nothing in the woods thinks more of its life than an old gobbler. I think that is true of especially a hen grouse. When you watch a grouse, they are constantly on alert, even though they're feeding, uh, preening, dusting, getting gravel, whatever they're doing, they're constantly on alert. And when you see a grouse suddenly turn his head, they'll stop and turn their head. They're looking something in the sky. Avian predation is their greatest threat. Terrestrial predation, not nearly as much. They are constantly alert for that avian predation, and always always seem to be nervous about things, constantly looking, and they in their daily activity. The first thing they do in the morning is wake up and stretch. And I've loved to see these birds in the morning stretch one leg way out. I don't know if you can see me doing that.
Yeah.
And you've seen songbirds do it. Stretch that out, and you can actually hear them kind of, and they'll do it with both sides and then fluff and get those feathers all in line. And they'll start feeding. And grouse always will have greens in their crop. Even when there's snow on the ground, they tend to find some greens somewhere. And often in snow conditions, it'll be the tips of ferns. They they're they eat so many species, so many. It's like almost 700 species of foods that they eat, from soft mass to hard mass to greens. But they always find a certain amount of green, certain amount of vegetation. So they're always looking for that, and they move very cautiously. A grouse doesn't run and make a lot of noise. He walks silently, and he's always listening. They have tremendously large eyes. When you look at a grouse, his eye looks tiny, but if you skin out his head, his eye is tremendously large, and it's right in front on both sides of a very large brain. Grouse have a large brain, and they are always alert, always thinking, always watching, and their vision is hawk-like vision, just tremendously sharp vision, and extra, very supreme, very superb low light vision. They can see in the dark very well. Right behind that big brain is two big holes in their head. Looks like 22 bullets been shot in their head. That's on the backside of the brain. So this brain is surrounded by two giant eyes and two giant ears that are always working. I don't believe you can enter a grouse woods without him or her knowing you're there, because they're so alert. Their vision and hearing is absolutely equal to that of the wild turkey, and which is legendary. They're known to be super acute at that. The grouse are, even no matter what they're doing, and stretching in the morning, getting about to feed, walking about, and they walk about their home range. A home range for a ruffed grouse in a lifetime is about 2 square miles. In a day, you might go 1/8, a quarter of a mile in a day's time. They don't move very far, and they will move related to the heat, especially in real hot weather in springtime. You'll find them moving to the shady side of the cover. And I had a fellow, an outdoor writer, on a grouse hunt one time, and I took him to a spot on the game lands where I knew there were a lot of grouse. I'd been there the day before, and we hunted the east side of that game lands, and finally he did get 1 point, and I killed that grouse for him. He needed it for his article, A little later on, I checked some hunters up on the top, and they said, "Oh, you were on the wrong side of the mountain. We were hunting deer over on the other side, and there were grouse everywhere." But it was the cooler side of the morning, and this was a very hot, cooler side of the day, and this was a very hot fall day. So they use their habitat so specifically for their comfort and their safety that they are the ultimate in the survivalist. It's hard for a hawk or an owl to get ahead of a grouse, but they do. And talk about owls. One of the things we can do to help them evade owl predation is to provide conifer cover, and especially hemlock, eastern hemlock, is great cover for the owls at night. Many grouse, in certain conditions, grouse will roost on the ground, a very secluded place on the ground, especially in high wind and so forth. But in cold conditions, they'll fly up and roost in conifer trees. And if we can supply some conifers in our habitat, if we're doing clear cuts, we should leave those conifers there, and they use them for thermal cover. Same with mountain laurel and rhododendron.
That's a good,
Yeah.
good. It's one question I've always had, and Tim, maybe, hopefully, you can answer this question. No worries if not. But do you, in addition to those conifers, where do you see a lot of grouse roosting, or what's an ideal grouse roosting site? We know they snow roost when there's snow, and obviously we can envision what it looks like on the ground. But in the absence of hemlocks or those conifers, where do you see grouse roost most often?
They do an awful lot of ground roosting, and when you find a ground roost, I write a lot about it in that book, Grouse and Woodcock. They will select a ground roost that gives them some protection from vision and wind from the west side. Our prevailing winds are from the west. They'll usually have their back up against something to block the west wind and block vision from a very wide, it may be a blow down log. I've actually seen them roost up underneath logs quite often. I've had my dogs point birds roosted underneath logs. I saw one in a hollow tree, the base of a hollow tree, roosting. He had a really comfy home. But ground roosting is very, very common. What that does is blocks the vision and the wind from the backside, but gives him very good view to the east and the south. They'll select, often that ground roost will be on a bench or a slight downgrade, so he has a broad view out to his front. They are always concerned about danger, always looking for that hawk or that owl. They can see you and I or a terrestrial critter approaching, and they will absolutely freeze when they're on the ground roost. They do not move. They look like they're dead. Another thing I should add is I've often seen them when I was photographing when a bird avian predator comes nearby. They will freeze. Sometimes they'll freeze, look as stiff as straight as they can, just to look like a root sticking up in the ground. And I've seen them stand there for 30 minutes and not move. And that absolutely not move. That I don't think they even blink. They often use that freezing action to deter or to avoid predation. But ground roosting is very, very common, and they really know how to do it. When you find one of those, you'll find a pile of droppings where they sit absolutely still, and all those droppings build up under their backside. You need to log it here or log it in a logbook, because you're going to find him there again. If they've got a good grouse roost, they use it repeatedly, and it's a prime bit of information, intelligence to use for your hunting. Something else I wanted to tell you about that, and it's gone right out of my mind.
No worries.
They do like conifers. One of the last day of January in Maryland's season, number of years ago, Maryland had a lot of grouse years ago. The last day of the season was January 31st. It was a cold, nasty day. Friend and I went down there. We hunted beautiful cover, could not move a bird. But then we walked into a Scotch pine plantation, and it just absolutely became alive. The trees were literally full of ruffed grouse roosting, all in one spot. I bet we pushed 50 birds out of there, and we didn't shoot at a one. And I really regretted rousting them out of that refuge on that bitter cold day. It was like 0 degrees.
Yeah. You mentioned predators. That grouse that I was telling you about that I film, um, I have a deer camera on it as well on the log, and it's a cell cam, so it's just constant. And I've had that camera on this log for how long, Cody? Jeez, 3 year, 4 years, 4 years now. 4 years now. Let's just say four for conversation. 365 days. So I get to see what really is, coming after this bird. And it's funny. I think I've gotten maybe a couple bobcat, but they're just looking at the log, nothing aggressive. A coyote, one coyote in let's say 4 years of video, having the camera on there. The grouse was on the log, it flew up. The coyote comes, and then it was looking up, looking up at the tree.
Yes.
It knew it was coming way before, and then 10 minutes later, it's back on the log drumming.
Yes.
But there's this one sob a couple years ago. It was like coyote and a roadrunner. It was a barred owl. And this barred owl, like if you sit on the log, you go to that log and sit and you look around, Cody's seeing it. It's like, how in the hell is a barred owl is pretty big. It's like, how is it squeezing in this horizontal vertical cover? But it does. And I got deer cam video of the grouse jumping off the log and then the owl wings out running after it.
Oh my.
Yeah. And it was like that owl for the longest time. It was insane how it was like, I'm not giving up on this grouse, but eventually did. But I tell you what, it's like the predator prey situation on the log. At least this log, this area, the predator prey thing, the grouse really doesn't have to deal with much.
They're very able to deal with it. That log, the drumming log, is the center of the grouse's world. And grouse hunters, if you find a drumming log, you should hunt circles around that log, because most of the hens, I believe most hens are bred at night. I've never met anybody, biologists, hunters, anybody, photographers, that have actually seen grouse copulate in the daylight, or have seen them copulate at all. Yes, in captivity, but not in the wild. I don't believe it's ever been filmed, but I think they do it at night, and it happens near the log. Most grouse nesting then happens within about 500 feet of that log. So that's the center of the grouse's world, those drumming logs. Now, he may not have just one log. You probably know that. A carp grouse may have several logs that he drums on, but hunting around those logs will really increase your likelihood of killing a grouse.
Yeah, because like I said, I've been filming this grouse, let's say 6 years, and 4 or 6 years, and I've never ever, as much as this grouse drums, never seen another grouse anywhere coming to him, or he jumping off and going after another male or anything. So we're always like, hey, is he the last one? Is he the last of the dodo, But that's interesting. I never seen the research myself on the breeding aspect of it, because there isn't much.
No, as far as I know, it's never been seen by humans other than captivity. But of course, it happens. I believe it happens in the dark. Here's something else about this, about avian predation. The barred owl is an especial threat because he's crepuscular. He's active in the day in daylight, where the great horned owl is basically a nighttime hunter. He's a tremendous killer, but he's a night hunter. There's a change and shift between daylight predators and nighttime predators right about dusk. The most active time, the Gardner bump research found that grouse heart rates and activity is greatest between 2:30 and 5:30 in the evening. And that if you're a grouse hunter, if you want to get more grouse per day, per foot miles, hunt late in the day. Work the 7 to 3 shift and then go hunt. Right at dusk, grouse become very, very active, and there's a reason for that. And they will fly up into apple trees and so forth, and bud trees in bare trees in grouse season. Say in November, there's no leaves on our deciduous trees, and these birds will fly up there and start picking buds right in the open. And they'll feed for 15, 20 minutes and gorge themselves. But they are most active at that time of the day. And one of the reasons for it is the daylight hawks are changing shift to the owls at night. So there's a certain period of time there when the hawks are sort of laying down their work, and the owls aren't out really doing their preying it quite yet. And the grouse know their heart rate is more active at that, and they gorge themselves quickly and then go back to roost, those ground roosts. They'll gorge themselves in about 15 minutes, right at dark, and then go back to that ground roost and sit there and digest that food. And in snow conditions, they might be there 20 hours or 23 hours before they go back up and feed again. So it's amazing how they take advantage of the shift between the avian predators, the night shift and the day shift.
Mm.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I've learned a ton already.
If you want to flush more grouse per hour, hunt the last hour of the day. It is the most productive hour. The birds are more active. They're out feeding, moving around, and we know when they walk, they only fly up to feed or fly away from us. They're putting down more scent for your dogs to pick up, and more opportunities for you to get a shot that last hour of the day.
Huh.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that. It makes sense. I read somewhere, I don't know if it was in the ACGRP book and research, or I read it somewhere else, but there's a pretty noticeable during, peak breeding or peak drumming during the spring that they kind of decrease drumming a little bit. And I can't remember exactly what I read, but a lot of people believe that when they drum a little bit less, just say, the middle of May, and of course it depends on where you're at, but that brief decrease in drumming, there's a correlation between that and the hawk migration. So they March and April, they're drumming most frequently, and then whenever hawks are migrating through the area, they're drumming a little bit less frequently, and then once the hawks have gone through wherever they're en route to, then they, that's final 2 or 3 weeks of spring into summer, whatever, they pick back up, and it's similar to how it was when they first got started.
That brings up an interesting thing I learned from for a number of years. I wrote the fall forecast for the Upland Almanac magazine for the Northeast states from West Virginia up to Maine, and I would contact the biologists in each of these states and talk to them. What do you see in the reproduction? There was he's now retired. Bill Igu was the upland bird biologist in West Virginia, and I contacted him one fall and I said, Bill, what do you see? And he said, Tim, you can't imagine the number of adult breeding grouse we had survive winter, and how many young. We've never seen a grouse reproduction like we have this year. We got grouse everywhere. I said, what do you attribute that to? He said, you remember that late snow we got in March? He said, and it stayed all through March when the hawks were migrating north. He said, almost all of our adult breeding birds survived, and now we have grouse everywhere. So March is a critical time, and the migration of the hawks has a great influence on the ruffed grouse. It really does.
Interesting. That's pretty cool. I've read, I think it's the ACGRP that, and it may be more so for the northern states, but I'm sure it applies down here as well. When we get that deep, fluffy snow, that survival rates increase when we have that snow because they can snow roost. And
something about drumming a lot of people don't realize is they drum all through the night. My favorite time to work as a game warden was at night because I live in deer poaching country, and I love catching these guys shooting deer with spotlights at night. I've got a couple books out on that. Those grouse, usually if I'm out at night, I'm sitting on the roof of the car or sitting on the hood because I want to listen. I want to hear all around or see a spotlight and get to it and catch the poacher. But 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, these grouse are just pounding away. And even though we don't see the birds around those drumming logs, they know where the hens all know where that drumming log is. He's doing that drumming to tell everybody, I'm the boss here. Here's the center. Come see me here. This is the main point of interest on this mountain. my drumming log. And
Yeah.
those birds know to concentrate. That's the center of his world in the world. So they and I'm sure all through that 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock drumming, there's some breeding going on as well. Breeding that we never see.
Cody, you got to tell him the story about leaning against the log that the grouse was almost going to draw him on. You got to tell him the story. Just real quick. Just quick.
Yeah, it's and I'll ask you. Yeah, we got a question for you. I'll save for the end of the episode, Tim. But the story Eric's talking about is my most meaningful experience and memory with the grouse. It's one I had up on top of the mountain on my property. It was 2 springs ago, and I have just picked this picturesque scene where I was trying to film him on this moss covered log as the sun comes up behind him, and for whatever reason, he was very active, drumming all spring. I think it had something to do I think where he was roosting close to the log, and I didn't have a very bulletproof way to get in cleanly or quietly, or he saw me coming in, I think, because whenever I would go up there to film, he would always drum on a different log, not the one that I was set up on. But one morning I went up there, and it was, I think, the early May, and I had made a couple dozen trips to the top of this mountain, and it is a hike to get up there, and I was kind of tired and burned out, and it was my last trip up there. And anyway, I think he was kind of roosted at the time. I got in, well before first light, kind of settled in under my camouflage ghillie suit, set up on the log, halfway fell asleep. I think he was kind of roosted in a redbud tree to the left of me, because I heard some rustling around, then heard those little, those light footsteps and the leaf litter, how you can hear when they're approaching, but didn't really think anything of it. But he didn't hop on the log that I was set up on to film where he would typically drum, but I was leaning up against a log, a different log, not a drumming log, at the base of this cherry tree. And at first light, he kind of pitched down, heard him walking. He walked right in front of me, not enough light to film, but he hopped up on the log that I was leaning up against, and he was, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 yards from me. I was leaning.
Wonderful.
He was on the same log that I was leaning up against. We shared a log that morning, and I was just begging him to drum. He never did. He knew something wasn't quite right, but that was.
Could you imagine?
That was a really special
Wonderful.
memory
What
to
a
me.
privilege.
Oh, I
Right?
know. I count myself very lucky to have shared a log with a ruffed grouse on a spring morning.
And you will never forget that moment.
No, sir,
Never.
not at all.
No, the drumming logs are magical places, and we don't realize how important that log is to the grouse community. It really is. And if you talk about habitat, we need to, when we do clear cuts, we need to leave some logs in those clear cuts for a couple of reasons: for drumming, but also for decaying. One of the favorite things grouse eat, and people don't realize this very much, but I've seen them fill with them, is black ants. They love black ants. And old trees, rotting trees, standing dead trees, and some rotting logs are important to leave in clear cuts because of that food supply.
Yeah. I know Cody and we talked about it briefly a year or 2 ago. We got all these things we want to save the world from, and one of the things is trying to get, state agencies, or if they do, logging on state or even a federal ground, to put it in the contracts to leave logs for drumming.
Yes.
And that's something that, Cody, we probably need to revisit, try to, it's simple. It's just language. It's just language in contracts. That's all it is. And is it easy hanging fruit? Yeah, but it's still like what Tim just said, It's, how important that is. Yeah.
Well, timber management has a couple different facets to it. Most wildlife agencies don't want to spend money to cut timber to make habitat. They kind of loathe that, and if the timber's poor, it's hard to sell that poor timber. Recently, here, and since my retirement, the game lands that I was so fond of was pretty much a monoculture of real low quality rock oak, twisted stuff about maybe 14 inches, the biggest stuff. It just was everywhere. Recently, our game commission people sold that off, vast areas of it, sold it off, and they cut it right down to the mud. I mean, you talk about a clear cut, and it was all sold for cut into chips, big chips for making charcoal. So they actually made money on it. State agencies, if they can sell the timber, will go ahead and make some habitat, but they don't want to spend money to do it. Here in Pennsylvania, give you an example how timber is managed. We have state forest. We have one national forest, state forest, and game lands. The game lands, we have a million and a half acres of game lands. By law, the Game Commission is required to manage their forest for the benefit of wildlife. It's right in the law. So we cut timber to benefit wildlife. We will make cuts for to benefit woodcock and grouse. On the state forest, which is a much even greater amount of timber, they're to manage their timber for timber return. So one of the things they do, our main grouse food here in our mountains is black birch and witch hazel. Out west, it's the aspen. Here, our aspen here is the black birch. Our grouse really love black birch, but on state game lands, we preserve the black birch. When you cut oak trees down, birch just thrives. It comes up in thickets, and the grouse love it and they flourish in it. On state forest, when they cut the oak down, they burn the forest. They burn the birch out. The birch, for a short fire burns, kills all the birch, but doesn't kill the oak seedlings. So they purposely kill the birch, which is detrimental to the grouse, because they're required to manage for oak timber. It's a lot of it. Well, a tremendous amount of it is all about economics. What our goal is, and the bottom line is the dollar. For us grouse hunter, the bottom line is the grouse, having grouse.
That's an interesting point. We've talked about it in previous episodes, Tim, is the difference between grouse management and oak management. And, grouse, they eat acorns. That's a big part of it. We're obviously not advocating to do away with oak hickory forests or whatever, but I think that's a really good point. I'm glad you said, because a lot of people now are we're burning more. I think private landowners especially are burning more than we ever have before. And people encourage so many oaks, but if grouse are your focus or you're making management decisions for grouse, it's a very different type of management than it would be for deer or turkeys. But when you make management decisions for grouse, the deer and turkeys are going to benefit as a whole. So sometimes it's better to let's not burn so much, or let's encourage those species such as black birch. And I have a question before we move on to something else. So with the black birch, is it a mixture, one or both, the buds or the catkins? Because I have a lot of black birch on my property, and I'm curious, what they're favoring there as the food source, the buds or the catkins, or I'm guessing a little bit of both. But what are your thoughts on that?
That's predominantly seasonal. The buds and the catkins are available at different times. So, but almost every grouse that I've killed had black birch buds or catkins in it, depending upon what was most available at the time. There's in the springtime, like right now, this is springtime for wildlife. February is springtime, and we'll have woodcock here. I'm about 13 miles or 17 miles from the Maryland line in central Pennsylvania. We'll have woodcock here probably right now or next week, and so they'll be moving through. And right now, our birch trees are just loaded with buds. Now, those buds are going to break out into leaves and eventually catkins. So the consumption is seasonal, but birch is vitally important. And another really important item here is witch hazel. The witch hazel flowers in the fall. In October and early November, you'll have witch hazel flowers, the bright yellow flowers. Just give an example. One year we had almost no fruit in the wild, almost no mass. We'd had a heavy frost or heavy freeze in the wintertime, and the only thing grouse were feeding on. I would sometimes have my deputies on a day off drop me at a point of a mountain, and I'd hunt 12 or 15 miles down the mountainside to where I'd left my car, and the only place I would flush a grouse is if I saw witch hazel or saw a patch of black birch. You could almost push the safety off before you got to that spot, because they would be there feeding. There was feed nowhere else. So it's a very dynamic situation, but food is available. Well, give you an example. in early fall, in the early part of grouse season, these upland wetlands, uh, stream edges and wetlands, little swamps, will be loaded with soft mass. All the dogwoods and the spice bush, and so it's just loaded black haw. They'll just be loaded with soft mass, and you'll have woodcock flying into there, but you'll have grouse in there gorging themselves, and they'll eat all day long instead of that last hour of the day when that soft mass is available. When that soft mass is depleted, then the grouse start moving away from there and up the mountain. Here, we're all mountainsides here. They start moving up the mountainsides, eating buds of maples and uh, ironwood and so forth, other species. One of the grouse I killed years ago was full of the samaras of striped maple, and
Okay.
our game commissions, our regional or forester, I had him dissect. I saved 52 grouse crops and dried them. Had him dissecting them and going through them, but I had this fresh one that had a handful of these samaras in. He said, "Oh, I've got to change my instruction at the Game Commission Training School." I said, "Why?" He said, "We teach all the young game wardens the grouse will not eat maple, striped maple whatsoever. They will always prove you wrong. They are opportunistic feeders, and ironwood is one of the species that's often overlooked. But grouse change their diet. They adapt to the diet that's available, just like we said about the birch catkins and buds.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they know where to find food.
That's very
That's
cool.
interesting.
One question, Tim, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but when it sounds like you know your woods pretty intimately, or photographing these birds, you kind of have an idea where an individual might be, and if you. Well, I guess first question before I ask when you can't answer. Are you able to identify individuals, from so my question would be, assuming that you can, how far of a distance are you seeing a male from its fall range to where its drumming log is during the spring? And I know that's dependent upon food sources, but if you're able to identify individuals, you mentioned their home range. Sometimes they'll travel a quarter of a mile, eighth of a mile, or whatever the case may be. But I'm curious just how far, their ranges overlap from the fall and the winter and going into spring.
I don't know that I can answer that as far as recognizing them as individuals, face to
Right.
face. I don't believe I can do that. But I know we know by hunting them and watching them that they do range, and like we just talked about, moving from different food sources. They have to do that to survive. And that New York study back in the '60s, they followed these birds with radio collars and so forth. They knew that they moved 1/8 to a half mile a day. And grouse, a lot of these grouse, by the way, I don't know if turkeys, a lot of us realize turkeys are somewhat cyclical. They'll move around their habitat in a certain time schedule. You might find them here on Tuesday and over here on Wednesday, but grouse do that somewhat with their habitat as well. In that book I talked about, that did for Wild River Press, there's a story in there about a 3 o'clock grouse. I would always find him in this habitat at one spot at 3 o'clock every day. Another one I found at 10 o'clock every day in a certain brush top. I knew where he was feeding, and he'd run into that brush top. Neither of those birds could I shoot, just because had gotten to know them so well. And one of the habitats that grouse like, and we tend to overlook this. I hunted with Doc Geist so much, and hunting with him was like a college education, a college class every hunt. But we were hunting in multiflora rose, and multiflora rose is a hated species. It's a invasive species. A lot of the invasive species that we have in the country, game outfits, game agencies introduced them, and this is one that we introduced. And I asked our fellow at the state nursery, I said, "How in the world did we get? Who suggested introducing all these things?" He said, "We based that all on the FDA, U.S. FDA, whatever they said to introduce." So we gave people barberry and tartarian, honeysuckle, and monoflora.
Black locust and
Yes, black
autumn
locust.
olive. I remember planting olive
Yes.
on
Oh, I
mud
hate autumn
ground in
olive.
college
Yeah,
and
autumn.
for money. Yeah.
Yeah, autumn olive destroys woodcock habitat, but the things that we hate have thorns. And when Doc and I were really putting some birds out of, we were finding them in a monoculture, a very thick area of multiflora rose. And he commented on, he said, Tim, man abhors everything with a thorn, but wildlife loves it. If it has a thorn on it, wildlife loves it. Grouse will tunnel in under the thorniest stuff they can get because they know that hawk can't get them. So thorny cover, all of the berries like the raspberries and the blackberries and greenbrier is a wonderful grouse food, a wonderful habitat. Also, and the deer love it as well. Hercules club that comes in after a clear cut has terrible thorns on it, and it tends to keep men out. So it keeps us out, but it provides food for these grouse. So hunt the thorns, and you'll find grouse.
Yeah. Well, kind of pivoting just a little bit here, sir. We know that the grouse have, we know we need to log to get grouse populations back up. But I would love, I mean, other than the obvious, I mean, what is Mr. Flanagan's version, excuse me, of what do we need to do to turn this tide when it comes to ruffed grouse?
Okay, let me give you a 2-point answer on that.
Yeah.
The first thing you're doing, and you're doing it well, is educating the public. When the public sees a clear cut, they think it's horrible. And a clear cut, as soon as the clear cut's done, for that first year, it looks bad. It just looks like a barren area. 2 years later, it's lush, beautiful, young forest. And, it's like trading in this, selling the adult forest to be able to buy a brand new forest. And Rush Limbaugh a long time ago said, best thing you can do with a tree is cut it down and make something useful out of it, because it's a renewable resource, and a new forest grows back. With black birch and with out in the Midwest, the aspens. I have very few aspen here. If you cut an adult aspen down, you get a tremendous amount of recruitment of suckers and young trees, which is so wonderful for grouse. One of the best examples, a monoculture of clear cut is not good. We need some diversity. And I sent an article to Cody about the gypsy moth and what that did. That was the greatest example of forest change, from losing the adult trees and changing into young forest, the early successional forest, ever to be seen. Thousands of miles. That the oak forests were denuded from clear up in Massachusetts all the way down through into West Virginia, and these young forests grew back. But they grew back in different times. When the forests were killed, the landowners would go in then and harvest those adult trees and sell them. So you would have a certain age here that was cut, and maybe next door, and the next several square miles would be a forest of a different age. One of the greatest influence I ever saw about that was I had an old gentleman call me one time. He'd seen the birding brochure I did for our county, and he called me on my phone. He said, Mr. Flanagan, I heard you like to photograph ruffed grouse. I said, yeah, I do. He said, you want to see one? I said, yes, I do. He said, come to my farm. He said, I got one chases me around. He said, every time I go back to my camp back in the woods, he follows me around, wants to jump on my head. Well, it was one of these aggressive grouse. When I got up there, it was a beautiful big farm in a big valley in a neighboring county or a neighboring township. And he said, let me take you for a ride. He drove me through his entire woodlot, and it was enormous. Had several roads cut through it for logging, and it looked like he had done a Gordon Gullion grouse cut. If you're familiar with that, years ago, Gordon Gullion proposed that we cut 10 acres of timber and then cut right next to it, wait 10 years, cut the next 10-year intervals, make squares, a 10-year, like a checkerboard. This is what this man's property looked like. And there were grouse everywhere. And there were buck rubs everywhere. Just I said, my God, you must have a tremendous deer population here. He said, oh, yeah. He said, I said, a lot of bucks, too. He said, I don't know why it is. He said, but one of my boys usually kills the biggest buck in the valley every year. I said, I can see why. The food and the habitat was there.
Yeah.
The two main critters that compete directly with each other for food and habitat is grouse and white-tailed deer. They live in the same habitat, eat the same things. When we drove through that, I said, "This looks like you did a Gordon Gullion cut." He said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, it looks like you cut this in a checkerboard." Oh, he said, "About every 10 years, every 5 or 10 years, I need some money. I sell off 10 acres of timber." And that's how he created. It was a grouse paradise. That gentleman has passed away now, but he had inadvertently made a grouse paradise with a chainsaw. And the chainsaw gives man great power to regulate ruffed grouse and provide habitat to them. Cutting down those trees and being careful what we leave. One of the things we should be cognizant of is grouse need to bud, especially in the wintertime. And we should leave, and this fellow had done that, had left adult trees along some of the boundaries. They were clear cut in these lots, in these about 10-acre lots, but there were adult trees along the edges of power lines and right-of-ways. And another thing is all of the trails had been seeded with herbaceous stuff, because grouse eat greens, always. One of the best things you can put down for grouse is clovers, any of the clovers, and bird's foot trefoil. Matter of fact, Dr. Geis, Fish and Wildlife Bell, as we were talking about road hunting and ground swatting grouse like they do up in Maine. Up there they call that heater hunt. Oh, I heater hunt. He said, Tim, you won't believe it. I was at a meeting, a nationwide meeting about grouse habitat, and the biologists from Maine were bragging about how they were clearing small sections of land along their highway, along these logging roads, and planting clover in there to help the road hunters fill their larder. So seeded right-of-ways and leaving some budding trees and leaving some mass-producing trees in clear cuts means a lot. Yeah. Could I mention oaks? We talked about oaks a little bit.
I would love to hear your take on oaks, Tim, because it's something I wrestle with, and we've had a couple other guests on. I love to pick people's brains about it, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier that oak management is very different than grouse management. That ACGRP research indicates that after good mast years that we have an uptick in grouse populations, healthier males, healthier hens, healthier chicks, bigger yolks in the eggs. Like all those boxes get checked, but if you're not careful and you start prioritizing your oaks and you're leaving too many oaks, you create a habitat that isn't like we talked about, running too much fire through there, killing those black birch or poplar or aspen, those species and shrubs that create soft mass and buds for grouse. It can be detrimental to grouse. So it's a question I like to hear a lot of people's opinion on, and would love to hear yours as far as oaks go and grouse.
Well, I have a strong opinion on oaks, and based on many years of experience. And at this age, I now regret the amount of grouse that I've killed through the years, and I took a lot of them. I have never killed a grouse that had an acorn in its crop. Never. I have a neighbor across the street from me. He's a little younger than I, and he's still really hunting grouse. He too has killed an awful lot of grouse, has never found an acorn in a grouse crop. And I have only once photographed, it was a hen grouse. I photographed a hen grouse. I can send you the picture. She's consuming a white oak acorn. If they're going to eat any acorns, they're going to eat white oaks. But as far as the importance of oak for grouse, I don't find that vitally important. They use many other species. All the dogwoods, whether the shrubs or the flowering dogwoods, all the ironwoods, a lot of the maples. Red maple in the springtime, grouse just gorge themselves on red maple flowers in the springtime. Black cherry, they eat the fruit, they eat the leaves, they eat the buds. All of those are far more important in my mind, in my experience, than is an oak. A white oak, yes, and deer love the white oak, of course, but deer are detrimental to grouse. And deer eat grouse out of house and home. And we've seen that happen here in Pennsylvania. We mismanaged the deer population, and they really knocked the daylights out of the grouse habitat. So it's
I'm
I'm
glad you
not
said that.
I'm not prone to promoting oaks for grouse because I've never found them eating them except that one bird. I saw one bird eat an acorn.
Yeah, I have. I mean, you've got. Yeah, I would love to forget what you've known about grouse. I'm sure grouse do, but it's just if grouse are our focus and what we're passionate about, and it's difficult to do, especially given where we're from. There's so much of our forest is oak hickory. You just kind of have to. And we're not again not advocating to do away with oaks, but I agree. It just takes a shift in your mindset, and I have to remind myself to do it and convince myself to say, hey. I'm more concerned about ruffed grouse than I am deer, turkeys, or anything else. And as part of that, it's just you have to care less about your oaks. And it's not that you're diminishing the importance of oaks, but for grouse, like you've highlighted throughout this episode, just the importance of soft mast and shrubs from witch hazel in the fall, as you said, spice bush, those native shrubs that have those buds, catkins, soft mast berries, and fruits. That's the ticket for ruffed grouse here in Appalachia. Thorns, as you said, if it has thorns, it keeps predators off of them. And I'm glad to hear you say that about the oaks, and I'm especially glad to hear you say that about the deer as well, because there's a pretty direct correlation between deer density and grouse numbers.
Oh yes, and diversity, forest diversity is very important. A monoculture of oaks is not good really for anything, but in our grouse also eat poplar seeds and cucumber tree.
Cucumber tree, yeah.
Yes, they eat all of that to the exclusion of oak mass. Oak mass is not that important now. Turkey's oak mass is much more important to them than it is to the woodcock. But diversity, and when I mentioned that old farmer who had cut the 10-acre blocks, grouse don't really thrive in one big clear cut. They need some edges that are of different forest, not density, forest age, different forest ages. And edges, they prefer edges. Now, an edge can be one side of a stream compared to the other side of the stream. There'll be different habitat, different plants on forest diversity on either side of the stream. Sides of one of the power lines. Either side of a power line can be a completely different habitat for them. So we really, when we're looking for grouse and hunters, we need to really work those edges. And a grouse hunter should pay attention to, vitally important to pay attention to every spot where you flush a grouse. When you flush a grouse, whether you missed him or got him, examine that spot, look around. What kind of food is here? What is the structure? How does the sunlight and wind, everything about that? Why was this bird here? And the more you understand why a bird was in that habitat, the next time you're on that mountainside, you'll say, oh, that looks like that habitat. That over there looks like this habitat. And, well, one of the guys, an old timer that hunted here years ago, he was strictly a walk-up hunter. He had never owned a dog. And he was a very savvy grouse hunter. But he knew the bird hotspots. He would walk the mountainside from hotspot to hotspot to hotspot because he knew what grouse habitat looked like. We can teach ourselves that by taking the time to really examine every spot where you encountered a grouse. It's so important.
Yep. We talk about that quite a bit. We've kind of inadvertently coined it our grouse goggles when you're walking through the woods, and so many people they're looking through deer lenses or turkeys or whatever, and that's fine. That can be part of it. But when you put on those grouse goggles, and you said it really well, you flush a grouse here, just immediately look around and ask yourself, why was he here? And if you look at a 360-degree view, you'll find the answers as to why that grouse was in that spot. You'll find the cover type that he needs. You'll find more than likely the food sources he was finding value in. Same with the drumming log. If you find a drumming log, that is, as you mentioned, it's the most important. It's the hub of that, and it's the most important thing in his life. And if you look around, you'll see a lot of overhead cover, horizontal cover, high stem density, and you'll see that this is where he feels the most safe in the entire world. And you'll get the answers to those questions just putting those grouse goggles on.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about is when that grouse flushes, where did he go?
Hmm.
On fairly flat or on our real rugged mountains, when they fly down over the side of the mountain, there's no chance you're going to find out where he went. But on let's say uh, woodlots in farming country, you can usually follow that grouse up. He will fly to another grousey site, another safe place.
Yeah.
That is more education for you, more to learn about you. Now, you should only follow. I believe you should follow up every. You have to follow up every grouse you shot at, because sometimes one shot in a grouse will kill it, even though you didn't see it fall. So if you shoot at a grouse, you must follow it up. How many times should you follow up a flush? I think one is fair. Every time a grouse flushes, he puts 100% effort into that. That roaring flush. He's got a white breast. It doesn't have a lot of blood in it to power him like a duck and fly long distance. He's like a drag strip car. He flies a quarter mile as fast and hard as he can, and he's tired. When he hits a quarter mile, he's tired. Next time you flush him, he'll sit tighter and let you get closer each
Mm.
time. And I had one time I had an old dog and a young pup, and we were in a big long ridge of forested woodlots in farm country. We followed a bird up 7 times, and on the seventh time he just sat there and went peep 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 peep, like please don't kill me. So
Right.
follow him up one time, and if you flush him again, look at that habitat. That's more intelligence for you.
Absolutely. You'll understand why he was there. Well, this has been awesome, Tim. Gosh, I could talk to you about grouse and what you've learned and
For sure.
until I am blue in the face and the sun sets and we start another day. But I know you're busy. We got to let you get going. But one question we ask all of our guests, and I've been looking forward to asking you this question specifically. It's a simple question, but what is your most meaningful and memorable experience with the ruffed grouse? I'm sure you have plenty.
Oh my.
And I'll give you some time to think about it. It's a tough question to put you on the spot, but
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, while you think about it, when what Cody just said, how how enjoying this has been. I feel like I was just in the lecture hall at my college learning grouse management. I'm sitting there like I am physically and mentally exhausted to listening to is this. I'm gonna have to listen to this a couple times. Like, oh my gosh, yeah,
Well, it's fun. It's fun to talk about it and share the lifetime experiences. It's just so much fun, and I was able to hunt with some of the most interesting people. Dr. Geis was one of them. Bill Gowdy from the Rough Grouse Society. Bill's long
I've
past,
heard
and
that name before.
was a great guy. We'd be talking about grouse, and I mentioned about killing a bird that was full of worms, and the worms had been picking worms out of a some cow patties. He said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, he said, "Well, did you ever kill one that was full of black ants?" I've said, "Well, I've seen some black ants." And he said, "I killed one up in Canada. When I picked that bird up, black ants just boiled out of it." I said, "Wow, that's a lot of ants." And he said, "Oh, they love them." And he said, and I mentioned these worms. He said, "You ever kill one with an 8-inch garter snake in it?" I said, "You didn't." He said, "The heck I didn't." Had an 8-inch garter snake in its crop. One of the other things I've done with grouse, if I don't now, our grouse population is so low. I don't find roadkills anymore, but every roadkill that I would find, and especially being an officer, I'd just pick these roadkills up and dissect them and look at. Summertime grouse crops contain some amazing things. A lot of invertebrates and slimy critters. On January 31st, one year down in Maryland, I killed a grouse, one of those radio collar telemetry grouse. I killed him late in the day, and he had 14 hazelnuts in his crop and
Jeez.
47 slugs. 47 slugs and 14 hazelnuts. And I saved that crop. I forgot about it when I went to photograph it. It turned to slime. But they will find food and they will eat some of the most amazing things that we don't even imagine. So we must not have tunnel vision on what a grouse will eat. He'll eat all kinds of things. June bugs, grasshoppers, crickets. He'll eat them. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're kind of like deer in the way that they'll eat darn near anything. There's
Yeah.
if a deer can get to it, it'll eat it, and it sounds like I'm learning the grouse are the same way. But yeah, I'm curious, what's that most meaningful memory you have with the King of Spring?
Boy, I've spent so much time with them. I'm having a hard time coming up with that. I have so many encounters with them. Some of them up close and personal, getting flogged by them and so forth. But so many times just watching them and being amazed at how they conduct their lifestyle. Matter of fact, I recommend an article. This winter issue of Covers magazine had a feature article in it called "A Day in the Life of a Grouse," and it's a 3,500 word article, and it's all about what a grouse does in his daily life, from stretching in the morning to going up to feed in the evening, gathering grit, what kind of grit they like, so forth. It's a worthwhile article to read. Watching all of that and being so intimate with that, every encounter has been very, very special. I at this time I could not kill a grouse. I could not bring myself to kill a grouse. One of the things I should tell you about that my wife and I did, I was sitting in a blind one springtime for several years ago for black bear, and my phone buzzed. I had it on silent. My phone buzzed, and it was Lisa Williams, the upland bird biologist for Pennsylvania. And I said, "Hi." She said, "How you doing?" "Okay, where are you?" I told her, and she said, "You want to go on a trip?" I said, "What's that?" She said, "I need a bunch of grouse eggs in an incubator transported out to Idaho to a propagator." She said, "We're going to have them tested for West Nile virus." I said, "You're on." So she agreed. We picked up long story short, picked up this incubator with 32 grouse eggs in it. And of course, they had to be kept at 99 degrees
Yeah.
and 65% humidity through that whole trip. And every 12 hours, my wife had to turn them with special gloves. We were out Interstate 70 most of the way, and every bump made us go, "Oh no!"
Oh,
But we got all 32 eggs there, and they all candled alive. They raised a propagator out there. I wish I could say his name. He's the world's finest propagator for grouse. He hatched 16 of all 32. 16 were exposed to the West Nile virus. 16 were not. They were all then killed and examined at a university. I think it was Denver University, which is the best place for examining blood. And they found that they could identify antibodies that were created in the blood of the ones that were exposed, and didn't see the antibodies in the ones that weren't exposed. That enabled our biologists then to develop a swab to give to a hunter, that when you killed a grouse, you could swab the blood and send it in. And then we could identify how many grouse had West Nile virus. And West Nile has really pounded our birds here. They're normally, 15 years ago, I could go out and drive our mountain roads morning and evening and see, 10, 15 grouse. Now, if I see one in a year, and the only place I see grouse now is above 1,500 feet, 1,500 feet above, because there are fewer mosquitoes up there.
right.
But to get back to that question, the most impressive encounter with a grouse has been every one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know how to narrow it down.
No, that's a good enough answer.
I like how he lied that all 32 made it. Don't say like around maybe South Dakota, like, man, honey, I'm hungry. You know?
I'll send you
poached eggs going on.
I'll send you some pictures of the Debbie turning the eggs and so forth. By the way, that study was not initiated by the biologist. That study was initiated by an old savvy grouse hunter, Richard Weaver from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. He's a school teacher, but a very avid hunter, and he raises top quality English setters. He had a lot of, as most of us do, woodcock and grouse hunters have a bunch of different covers. You know, if you don't find birds in this cover, you go to this cover, and you should have several covers. Well, he noticed a gradual decline in the grouse numbers in all of his covers, not one. in all of them, and nothing had really changed in the covers. And he said, this has to be disease. So he kept meticulous notes on this, days and times and numbers of flushes, and he supplied that to Lisa and convinced her this had to be a result of the impact of a disease, and that got her to initiate the study for West Nile virus, which proved to be absolutely true.
Wow.
So
Crazy.
Our birds are struggling.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we got to have you back on. Right, Cody? I mean,
Oh gosh, yeah.
we gotta
100%.
have you back on after a bit, because there's a million things that my wheels are turning and stuff, and it's getting late and everything. But can't thank you enough, sir. My gosh, what an education!
I made a bunch of notes. We probably didn't even touch them, but do either of you have that book, Grouse and Woodcock, The Birds of My Life? From
No, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know.
No.
I will order it.
Let me show
I
you.
know the cover is pretty. The cover's incredible. Who took the photo?
Yeah, who do you suppose took that cover?
Did you buy that or?
Yeah, I bought the cover. This book contains the greatest compilation of natural history of the ruffed grouse and American woodcock to be found in any single volume. Everything you need to know about even the nutritional value of a worm and what makes up a splash of woodcock.
Yeah.
It's
Do you have the book? Like, do you
no,
have them with
you
you?
have to buy it through Wild River Press. Just go
Okay.
online, Wild River Press. Now, this standard edition was $100. It's now $150.
How much?
It's now $150,
Okay.
but it's worth every bit of it. If you
Well,
want to know
yeah.
about grouse and woodcock, you should have this book.
Yeah.
There's a limited edition of 100, and there's only a couple of those left. That was $300. He's now raised that to $500.
Ooh.
So, but
Eats.
if you want to spend a little money that you'll love, get that book.
Well, how do you get a book that's signed?
Oh, yeah.
Is that $600?
If you bought the
is that
limited
$600?
edition, they're signed. But if you buy one and send it to me, I'll sign it and send it
I
back.
tell you
to
what, I might have to do that, sir.
Where are you folks located?
I'm in
I'm in
Ohio.
I'm in Virginia.
Oh, I meant to tell you something about Virginia. Did you know the Bill Norman, the biologist down there?
I don't know him personally, but I have his contact, and he's on my list of people to have on this podcast.
He would be a good interview. Bill's a savvy guy. He was one of the biologists that I would interview every year about grouse and woodcock habitat. And we got to talking, and he said, Tim, well, the problem is down here we can't cut trees. I said, what? He said, a vast area of Virginia is I think it's Washington National Forest. And he said, they're only cutting 1% of what they're allotted to cut every year. 1%. And he said, so our grouse cover has just grown into big timber.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
and that excludes the grouse.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it's
shame.
important to manage our forest for wildlife. And there's nothing more productive than the early successional forest, not just for grouse and deer, but for songbirds and mice and voles and coyotes and foxes. Everything flourishes in there. So
Absolutely.
early successional forest is so valuable. It's like trading the old car in for a new car. Cut the big timber and sell it, buy the new car.
I like that analogy. I've never heard it communicated that way, but it makes perfect sense. You sell the old and you buy the new. That's a great
and
way to communicate it.
We get a brand new forest out of it. So,
And all the good that comes along with it, because you don't get
Yeah,
rough
I
grouse in an old forest.
You can't. I just don't see the logic. But that's a conversation that we want to have with you on a later day. That's for sure.
but one of the proofs of this, the value of that clear cutting is we sold clear cutting in Pennsylvania on our game lands because it benefited golden wing warblers. Well, the public, and I want to tell you, God bless you guys for advertising this and making the public aware of the value of forest management. If we told the public we're going to cut this timber on top of this ridge for golden wing warbler benefit, great, golden wing warblers. You're going to cut it for something people hunt. Oh no, you can't cut that for grouse hunters, but you can cut it for golden wing warblers. So the way you present things means an awful lot. And the billboards, you've got the billboards. God bless you for that. We have to educate the public on the value of wise timber management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate that, Tim. It
Thank
means a
you.
lot coming from you. And
Yes, sir.
this has been a phenomenal episode. I think it'll be a Tim Flanigan part 1 is what we're going to call
Yeah,
it. 'Cause
this is, I can see a lot of parts in this.
We'll certainly have you back on, but can't thank you enough, Tim, for your time, for sharing your stories and your knowledge and your experience. And yeah, like I said, we'll have you back on again. I'm hoping very, very soon, but thank you for today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the honor. I love talking about grouses, and obviously you guys too. So
Yeah.
we're kin. We're kin.
We
Love
certainly
it,
are.
brother.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Thanks, Tim.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
All right.
Thanks for the honor.
Well, I said in the introduction that Tim Flanigan is who I want to be when I grow up, and that episode only further reinstates that. I want to be Tim Flanigan when I grow up. I want to have all these experiences with Ruffed Grouse, these amazing photographs to show, and then this information and knowledge base to share. And if I'm honest, I want that head full of snow white hair when I get to be that age as well.
Right. He was sporting that hair, wasn't it? I mean, seriously. Leave it to us to pick for it.
That was awesome.
I
I
heard
tell you
the
what,
last
I
time.
forget how long the episode was. I don't, we just
Yeah.
finished it. We could have talked 2 or 3 times as long about each subject. I could have talked to Tim more about the habitat, where he finds birds, what birds are eating. We could have talked more about the hunting aspect, a lot of things that he learned. 2 things that jumped out to me. It's like, I knew it, but I didn't. It's one of those things. It's like you don't know you know it until somebody tells you. But a hen, defecating right before it flies, kind of as a predatory sensory defense, I thought was pretty cool. The flush, I think that I've never thought of it until Tim mentioned it. But when a grouse flush, if you're a hunter, 2-legged or 4, that initial flush is startling. So it buys that bird a couple extra seconds to get away.
That
I thought it was
second
super cool.
is long.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Never
Yeah.
thought of that before.
Yeah. I tell you what, maybe it's the painkillers that I'm on, but I was watching and listening and watching you listen to him, and it just saddens me because I know we were like, you and I don't know this gentleman, and we're within 20, 30 seconds, I'm throwing my arms up like, where you been? I mean, this is like we've known each other a million years.
Yeah.
And it saddens me that we're losing this, this demographic of like, who is the next up and coming people? We haven't met him yet. They got to be out there, but we haven't met him yet. But it's like that knowledge, that passion, and it just angers me to a certain degree. Like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about? I mean, it just...
No, for sure. It's it's certainly that. I guess to put a positive spin on it, it's. I kind of joked about it, but if I'm honest, like I would, there needs to be another Tim Flanigan that,
right,
right. He said how 30, 40 years down the road, there needs to be somebody on the whatever version of our podcast that exists, 40 years down the road. I mean, think of what we just learned.
I know
that demographic is aging, and there needs to be people. Hopefully we exist to fill that void and to pick up the torch and carry it for the next however many decades. But think of everything that Tim communicated to us that we didn't know prior to the episode: the perspective, the knowledge, the information, the science. I love to hear what he say about oaks and deer, and that's something I'm kind of settling in and squishing my feet into the soil to take a stand, because it's very important. Oaks are declining, so that's a separate topic. But when we're thinking about ruffed grouse, we got to be killing deer, and we got to be cutting trees and oaks.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't on board with that. But
no, That's going to be a tough sell, but
Yeah.
another bridge we need to cross amongst all the
Hmm.
rest of them. But no, it's crazy. It is. That was so wonderful. I joked around like that was sitting in lecture hall at Hawking College, 1993, 1994, listening to a professor talking. You're like, I'm still caught up. Can we talk about the first 10 minutes we're on half hour into it, and I got to
Right.
head, like, wait a minute. I love learning, and especially from someone like that. That was cool. And that just gives, not to sound cliche, because it might come off that way. That just gives you more motivation to do good work, but do it for the right reasons. Do it have passion in what you're doing, right? Is that, right? It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout all this, and again, we've only had a handful of guests, and I think inadvertently we're going to, I don't know about bump heads, but there'll be some people we have on who, I'm not going to say disagree, but and we should seek those out, to be honest. But I mean,
Oh,
everybody
yes.
we've had on we've been birds of a feather, and it's reassuring to know that there's Noah Smiths and Wes Hodges and Tim Flanagans and Mark Wileys and Mike Dyes out there who are investing in the species and its habitat and its future. It's reassuring and, like you said, motivating at the same time.
Yeah. It is exciting. It is exciting. The people that you meet in life, right?
Hmm.
I wouldn't have thought this, right? It's just,
Yeah.
man, that was good stuff. You've been on a roll, Mr. Altizer, getting some guests on.
Well, I mean, I imagine we'll strike out eventually, but
Yeah.
we've been lucky so far.
Yeah, I say, hey, how about this guy? No, that's stupid. Anyway, that's what he tells me. So sorry I haven't had you on yet, because Cody keeps voting it down. He won't let me have his say. But anyway, all right, brother, that was another great one. Everybody, man, just look up his book. What
Yeah.
was the book called? Grouse and Woodcock.
I think so. I
Pretty
can't
simple,
remember.
right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
imagine if you Google it, Tim Flanigan, Grouse and Woodcock.
Woodcock,
Wild
yeah.
River Press, he did say.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Definitely
sure the
look that up.
photos are worthy of a purchase, and then the information you'll learn.
Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, thanks for always supporting us. Thanks for doing the old 5-star, and you getting Chip and Dale stickers and stuff like that. And stay tuned for more great stuff that we have coming down the pike.
I'll let you have that one since you're injured.
All right. Hey, everybody, as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving.